Good morning, everyone. It's October 31st, Monday. It's the last day of October. It's a Halloween show today, last show for month of October. It was a very interesting experience to do live show every weekday. We have a lot of many different guests. It was a lot of fun. And today's a Halloween show. I have a hat. We have a couple of guests here today as well, Sean and Sue. Maybe you guys introduce yourself. Sean, you've been on the show, but maybe Sue will go first. Sue, can you please tell us about yourself?
Good morning. I'm Sue Bergamo. I'm a global CISO, and kind of a fun fact, I used to work in Salem, Massachusetts, and have an authentic witch's hat.
Wow. Maybe we'll do a show about this next time. It's very, very interesting, how to properly scare people of being a witch. Sean, for people that don't know who we are.
Yeah, I'm Sean Higgins. I'm the former CTO and co-founder at Herjavec Group. Recently left after about 20 years at that company. It was time to move on. Now I help CISOs and senior management have faith and understand their cybersecurity programs.
Sounds right. And I had the pleasure to work with you for the last 15 years of my life. Great. So today we want to kind of touch about the Halloween part, so scary part, and see what we can do. And because we have Sue here as well, and a global CISO and a global CIO, maybe we will touch about some facts and what scare people, what shouldn't be scaring people, and maybe what people should be doing that do not get to the point they get scared on a C level. Kind of what the preparation about it. What do you guys think?
Sounds great.
Great. So, Sue, maybe you will start because you have never been on the show.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm holding my breath. It is Halloween, and therefore there's a ton of surprises that could be coming our way. And, with cybersecurity incidents and attacks, you just never know what to expect. The only thing that you can do is be as prepared as possible. So while I'm holding my breath to see what the day may bring, I know back at the ranch, the team is monitoring all different types of alerts and, just, on high alert, just to make sure that we know what's going on and what's happening.
In the past, I'm wondering, is there anything you guys remember from past Halloween that happened on Halloween?
Not per se, but I would like to say that today's a perfect day to do a surprise breach simulation. And only because everybody's kind of on heightened alert right now. So for those of the folks in the audience that don't do any kind of testing of their employees, I believe the latest stat that I saw is something like 90% of all security incidents are human related. And it's true because people are trying to do the right things. And, they're multitasking, they're busy, they're just not paying attention. And today's a perfect day to launch a simulation and scare people to pay attention.
So you mentioned something interesting, and I believe we didn't talk about it this month. Breach simulation. What does it mean?
Well, you could do the 100 slide PowerPoint and just tell people how to identify an issue in an incoming email, or not to click on the ad on the internet site. But a true breach simulation, you can work with various vendors, education vendors, cybersecurity vendors, and they will actually help you launch a program, an automated program. And if done correctly, you can launch multiple simulations at any one given point in time, and literally, throw a whole bunch of, fake cybersecurity incidents at your employees and see who fails and see who passes. So the guideline is really understanding the metrics of the failure rate as well as the success rate, and then letting people know how they did.
Is the breach simulation mean spam or phishing emails, or we also testing the managed service provider or the SOC system, the people that are watching the alerts?
That's a great question. I typically start with employees first, and then you could work with your service provider to try to do the same thing, or ask them even better, because I don't know too many companies that will breach their provider, but ask them about their own program.
But this is the own program, or try to kind of breach simulate your company and see how the SOC will alert. Sean, I think you touched on this in the past as well a bit.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do a simulation, you want to test the whole chain. It's going to trigger something. It goes to whoever it goes to. And if that's your managed service provider, you're testing them. I think if you're doing things like that, certain people need to know what's going on so that you're not blowing up the entire food chain and saying, hey, the sky is falling when, it's really just a test. But you don't want the people on the floor to know. You want somebody up in management to know that, okay, so when it gets to a certain point, we got to quiet this down because we don't want to raise a test all the way up to the CISO. I mean, all the way up to the CEO and get the lawyers involved and all that kind of stuff, unless they know it's going to come, because they're going to raise fire alarms and bells all along the way. So you just got to be cautious with that because you really don't want to raise too many alarm bells up to that level unless it's really happening.
I would agree with what Sean just said. Typically, I would notify just a couple of people, like the CEO, the CFO. I'm usually sitting in the CISO seat, so I would know, but I don't tell anyone else. And then what I want to do is see who rises to the occasion. And in a good scenario, the people that are responsible, like your SecOps group, will shut it down pretty quickly. That's what you want to see. And I'll tell you, the last time that I did a simulated breach, I actually my SecOps team shut it down within literally a minute, which was terrific. But I had to say to them, could you just kind of open it up for a little while longer, because I want to see what happens with the employees and who clicks, even though it's a false test. So it's a great exercise in really understanding your maturity level in identifying cybersecurity issues.
Well, the other side of that is if they shut it down too quickly, is your process correct? I remember doing a tabletop exercises, pre-breach simulation stuff, where we simulated a worm getting into a network, and the process was the SOC got the alert, they reimaged the computer. And it's like, wait a second. Okay, let's step back and take a look at that process, because we may have wanted to capture some information on that laptop, to see if there's any data exfiltration or if it gone anyplace else. But we went in and said, okay, we're going to do this. The guy says, okay, we pulled the laptop, we reimaged it. Okay,
so you guys mentioned very, very great topics, and I think it's aligned to what we spoke about Halloween and being scared. If you train your nervous system, if you train your program to react, then if something happens, you're not so scared because you have the correct procedures. And you mentioned tabletop exercise, something that's also very, very important. Basically, I spent 5 years in the Navy. In the Navy, most of the time, and in the Army as well, you don't actually go and doing live exercise. You're doing simulation exercise when if the live exercise will happen, you will know really well what to do and not going to be scared. And we don't see it a lot. We know everybody's saying we need to do tabletop exercise. Everybody says we need to be trained, but in reality, we are so busy with kind of firefighting and other things that you don't do this. So let's talk more about this. So what is the tabletop exercise for people that don't know, and what you should be doing and how often you should be doing them?
I love the tabletops. They are as I like to say to my team, the best time to prepare for a cybersecurity incident is before it happens. And so I actually asked the team, we get volunteers, and we ask them to put together scenarios based on real live events. And then what I typically do is say, there's no management available today. They're at an offsite. Something has happened. And then I want to see, again, who rises to the occasion, who takes the lead. And it also should be aligned. What they're doing to, go through the tabletop should be aligned to your incident response policy and your communication plan. So, it's really understanding, to Sean's point before around what's the process to go through the tabletop, and then to preserve data if there is something that needs to be preserved, and then how do you basically remediate and stamp out the threat.
Well, and the other thing is you run tabletops at various levels in the organization, because at certain points it's going to hit the C level, And it's always amazing when you do those first few tabletops with that level, it's like, oh, we need to think about this. We need to think about this. They haven't thought that through, they haven't thought through, okay, we've had a major issue and, we've just exposed a whole bunch of data. What does that mean? A whole bunch of personal information. What do we need to do? Who needs to do the communication? What if we've got a ransomware attack? What if we need to pay? What if we have no way to pay? You're getting but at different levels, there's different things that need to be considered. And those first ones with the C level, it's like, oh, never thought about that. And then they get smarter and they start asking more engaged questions as to what's going on.
It's also important to engage people that are on the peripheral view. Maybe it's not SecOps, but maybe it's some other individuals that have responsibility for, say, the IR communication plan. And so it's okay to have, marketing communications or IT people, but whoever's responsible for participating in the incident response program should be at the tabletop exercises.
And I think the other thing that's important to note when you're talking about incidents is communication is closed. If you're involved in a cyber incident, you're not supposed to go tell your office mate about it unless they're part of the table. They're part of the incident response, because you don't want the wrong person communicating the wrong message. And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand. They start talking about it right away, and it's no. If you're involved, you've been read into the incident. You're in the incident, and you're only supposed to talk to those people in the incident.
And that's a great point, because the other thing with your communication plan that should be created before anything occurs is who's responsible to call in the authorities, who's responsible to disclose to the public if needed, who's responsible to understand if any interested parties need to be involved. And that's not the security team. It's typically the legal team and the CEO who makes that call. But at that point, if it's a major breach and a major incident, everybody's huddling in a room trying to figure out what's going on.
You just touch me and Sean's favorite word, breach. We had so many debates on this topic, and we had so many people say, oh yeah, I had this breach on my laptop because malware was there. I'm like, wait a second. It was just malware. Let's be very, very cautious about what we call a breach. So Sean, maybe you provide your version. And
I am very cautious about using the word breach, because breach is a legal term. Once you say breach, legal things happen. So, especially with privacy, once you say you've had a breach, you have so much time before you need to notify certain authorities. So anytime anybody says breach, I cringe, because that's legal. Incident, I'm okay. We got an incident, I'm good, because you're still keeping it in a closed community. But breach means you've got to legally do certain things at certain times. So be cautious with that usage of breach, because you may be starting your company down a road that they're not ready to go, or they haven't qualified for. Maybe two people's personal information got exposed. Critical, yes. But is it a breach according to the legal definition of a breach?
So someone who spends a lot of time with auditors and certification programs, I use the industry terms, which is event, which is in my mind a non-data exfiltration. So, your malware, or an incident, which would be a actual breach. Data has been taken. And those are my definitions of the two terms. And I think it's pretty clear. Like we fight events all day long, right? That's what we do for a living. But incidents, we try not to have them. They should be few and far between, if even non-existent. That's what we strive for. I want to go back for a second to the tabletop because I know that we're always talking about cybersecurity. And yes, cybersecurity is an important part of our world. But one of the things that doesn't get enough credence in the security realm is physical security and why it's
Mhm.
important to do it in a tabletop. With, especially in the United States, with some of the riots and protests that are going on right now, active shooter, I hate to say it, but, you have to plan for these things. And physical security is one of those things that should be tested during a tabletop exercise. So, Sean, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to do those either, but I try to weave them in at least. I do tabletops 4 times a year. I try to weave it in at least once, just so it's top of mind for folks.
Yeah, physical security is always important, and I think that we're very lackadaisical because we always like to hold the door for somebody, or just free to let them in. I will tell you uh, about uh, a physical security at our office building. I had been traveling for months one year, and I remember coming into the office. I hadn't been there in months. New receptionist. I start walking in, going to the door. She goes, "Where are you going? Who are you going to see?" I go, "I work here. I'm one of the co-founders." She had never met me before. Had my pass. I was going to the door. She at least attempted to stop me. So, um,
It's a good
just
example.
at least somebody's trying
What do you do
to
with
stop
physical?
you.
Yeah, what do you do with physical security in a way, in a like time where majority of us working from home? What does it mean, physical security? Is it the data center, or maybe it's my personal laptop that I'm leaving unattended when I'm working with people that are around me?
Well, that was a numerous amount of exercises, examples rather. I think that from a laptop perspective, the IT team should have some standards like password screensavers. And again, training people on, clean desk policy as well as you step away from your PC. You should have a screensaver on. By the way, if you're in a coffee shop and you step away from your PC, I wouldn't. I'd take it with you. I mean, it's that simple.
It's a good example. Sean, what do you think about shared places and PCs?
It's a very hard one because I think that a lot of people are working from coffee shops these days, especially working from home. You need to get away from it for a bit. Um, trying to understand what that standard is. I agree with Sue that you definitely need to lock your laptop every time you get away. Even I'm a home alone here in the house. I lock my laptop every time I get up, and if I don't, I'm like, wait a second, what did I forget? What did I forget? Um, it's fairly easy to do on Windows. Control Delete Lock, and you're good. I configured my Mac, so I just scroll my mouse to the corner, it locks. So simple things to lock your computer.
So if somebody watching the show, or when somebody gonna watch the show recorded later on, and he's a CIO, CTO in a not a security company, maybe it's a
Mhm.
fintech company, maybe it's something else, and they have some kind of security, or unfortunately, as majority of the smaller companies have an IT guy, but don't really have a dedicated security person, and they never did a tabletop access and never did simulation. What will be your advice from where to start? Because it's easy to say go hire a KPMG to do it for you, but not always realistic from a money perspective. So some advice is start by yourself without going nuts and hiring somebody. And I agree, eventually you need to have a professional do it for you.
I don't think you have to go nuts. I think that if you just pull your team together and say, let's talk about this, sometimes, again, depending on the formality and the maturity of the program, some teams have never been through it before. So just pull your SecOps team or your IT team together and say, let's talk about some incidents or some events that have occurred. And then from there, you can embellish the scenario. And honestly, you can take something that's so minor that nothing happened and make it into something really big, right? Like use your imagination and then, ask people, what they would do if the situation happened. Like, look, here's one. You terminate an employee and nobody really puts the process together around, how to do it, access control, They're in the building, there's nobody to walk them out, and they get angry, and or they get a hold of a computer and they have access because they're an admin, and they start downloading data or deleting data. I mean, you can embellish it as much as you want. And the team can come up with a lot of examples. And once you give them the free will to go after, from an imagination perspective, you'd be surprised what they come up with. It could be a lot of fun.
Well, I think that's one thing you talked about that's kind of key there, Sue, is to make sure you have those procedures. Talking about what's the procedure to onboard, and make sure it's documented. The same thing with offboarding. What happens when, and who kicks it off? Who's the approval? Somebody comes and says, "Hey, I need access to this system over here." Okay, you're an IT person. You don't know what's my approval process. How do I cover myself? If Evgeny comes to me and says, "I need access to system XYZ," do I give it to him, or do I have to go to Sue,
No,
his
no, no, no.
boss,
Never
and
give
say,
access to me. You know the answer. Don't give access to me.
But in addition to, writing down what you do, I like to have my SecOps team have playbooks, right, for different scenarios. It's not that they have to follow the directions, but I want them to have something, one, to train new people with, and secondly, in the event that they're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do, they have something to refer to, because
Mhm.
again, the best time to plan for an incident is before it happens.
Mhm.
I like how we unwilling more and more, like we almost going deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole and always uncovering something important. And let's continue with this topic. Think about this. Right now, a lot of people like to outsource stuff, and there's the new idea we need to have cyber insurance. So I don't care if something happened. I'm going to blame cyber insurance for this. They're going to deal with this. So let's talk about this. If something happened on a tabletop exercise, what is actually the responsibility of cyber insurance? What people need to know, because not always is going to pay for everything and deal with everything. Having said this, in some cases, they will maybe going to be the people who are going to call the incident response team as well. So there is pros and cons in having cyber insurance.
Yeah. So if you've ever filled out a form for cyber insurance, they ask about your policies and your procedures, and they want to know that you have a program in place, a security program. And they're going to expect that it's a solid program, and that it's, I'm going to say mature, even though it doesn't ask that question on the form. But it's just like your car insurance. So if you continuously get into an accident, you're going to have a higher premium. If you continuously have breaches, you're going to get a very large premium for your cyber insurance, or potentially canceled. So, it's there as, I don't even want to call it a safeguard. It's just in the event that there's litigation, and it may help defray some of the cost, but you can't count on cyber insurance to pay for what's happening in your company. The best defense is to have a good program, security program, that's mature and improved on an annual basis.
Agree. Sean?
Well, I think we're seeing shifts in the cybersecurity insurance as well. It used to be you got cyber insurance and that was it. Now they keep asking more and more questions. And depending on your cyber insurance, as Evgeny mentioned, if you have an incident above a certain level, you got to call insurance, because they bring in the people to handle the incident at a certain level, some of them. And, if you have ransomware, they have clauses in there that says, okay, you have ransomware, you need to call us and we'll take over from there. But again, you're paying for that. But they also are coming to you and saying, hey, so as you said, show me your cybersecurity program. Show me you do this. Show me you do this. And next year they add 4 more things. Do you have first year? Oh, you have seatbelts. Great. Do you have winter tires? Great. Do you have this? Do you have that? It just keeps growing, because they're learning too, because they don't understand what they need to insure. Because I was in a major cybersecurity incident back in 2014. They thought everything would be paid for by the cyber insurance. No, it was a mess.
And that's a good point, because if they have their own auditors that may come in and look at a first glance, but if they bring in a forensic firm, you're on the hook for that. And the forensic firms are very expensive. So again, the best defense is to have a good, solid program.
Sue, Sean, thank you very much. It's apparently 25 minutes. Time flew very fast. There are so many different topics we spoke about this today, and I have a feeling every topic of this discussion that we can probably go farther and deeper for another half an hour or an hour easily. So definitely interesting. Thank you very much. The month of October security awareness going live is done. I personally learned a lot from this last almost 20 something different shows. There's a lot of coordinations, a lot of many smart people came, and I really appreciate the time. I'm gonna go back to run the 2 shows I'm running, Cyber Inspiration and Security Architecture Podcast with Dimitri Reidman. For people that are watching, here is the link to see this there. If you want to find Sean and Sue, I'm sure you can find them on LinkedIn. If no, email me and I'll let you know where to find them. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Evgeny.